I'm Steven Streufert. I run this place, Bigfoot Books, here in Willow Creek, which started out as just a regular general bookstore, and yet because of the name Bigfoot in the business name, I suppose it attracted a lot of Bigfoot people, and they're all coming here because it's like Mecca in the Bigfoot world. This was the gateway to Bigfoot country back in the day, but it was the first outpost of civilization that most of these people came to when they were coming in and out of the backcountry, like Bluff Creek, and that's where the Patterson film was shot, and that's where the Jerry Crew footprint tracks were found in 1958. So since then, Bigfoot became more and more part of my daily life. And I was also investigating it by then too, sort of as a local history thing, because I came here in 2001 after finishing graduate school down in Humboldt State University, and I decided to stay here in Humboldt County. I liked it. I liked the book business more than going to get a PhD or something, right? So that sort of scholarly approach that I take to things started to apply itself to the Bigfoot topic. And that's when I started to meet people like Al Hodgson and Jay Rowland, who were these old time guys who were there back in the 50s and 60s, so it was very fascinating. And in 2003, they had the International Bigfoot Symposium here in Willow Creek, which was a major event. Al Hodgson organized it for the most part, along with help from people like John Green. They got, Bob Gimlin to kind of come out of the shadows and attend a public conference for the first time in a really long time. And so I got to be there when Bob Gimlin first started talking about the film and Bluff Creek and all that again. And of course, Jeff Meldrum and Kathy Strain and Moneymaker and Autumn Williams and all these people came around. The whole panoply of strange characters in the Bigfoot community, like Bobo. A lot of them have become good friends, and some of them become enemies. But yeah, so eventually that interest started to apply itself to some of the questions that still remain, like the location of the film site was not even publicly known at that point. And I thought that was very strange that they could take a group of people from the 2003 symposium, all the big names who had been here back in the day, even Jim McLaren, who carved that famous statue here. They were, some of them, local people who should know their way around the backwoods of our county, but this was also overgrown since 1967 that you couldn't even recognize the locality anymore. And that really bugged me, that there was no answer to this simple question. Like, beyond whether the subject in the film is real, you had to ask yourself, can't we even see the spot where it happened? And so eventually we got the idea that finding that spot would be at least something that we could do in the Bigfoot research community that would actually have a result that would show something real and actually document it all along the way. Since no one seems to be able to catch a Bigfoot and study it in person, and we have that film, but it's still not enough to prove it to people in the realm of science, or even the general public. Most people don't accept that it's real. So we wanted to find out, beyond that question, just what can we prove is true? All of the various events of the film's story and how it all came to happen. We had to investigate all of that. Well, not exactly. I mean, I was a kid who was born here in the United States in the 70s. That, post, after the Patterson film, it was a huge sensation on TV shows and movies. And so growing up, I saw these shows that um, just really fascinated me with many things in the world, right? I would read all of the paranormal books in the library. I read all the early Bigfoot books that I could find when I was like 10 years old. And I saw that film in a drive-in theater, when I didn't know what to expect the first time I saw it, but it was this huge screen, and here comes this Bigfoot walking across it. And just that image burned in my mind. It was fascinating just to think, like, could that possibly be real? Like, how can something like that live there? But it made me think about that location, how mysterious those woods must be to hold something like a Bigfoot. So, when I came up here for college, I thought about it in the back of my mind. I worked in bookstores, so I saw Bigfoot books come and go. I mean, some of them I wish I had bought because they are worth hundreds of dollars now, but uh, I got interested in it just coming out here to Willow Creek, and you'd see that statue every time we went by to go swimming in the river. So um, I thought, well, that Willow Creek place is pretty interesting, and maybe I should go and check that out a little more. I had this girlfriend at the time, and we had a kid on the way, right? And so we thought, what a great place to have a kid grow up, in out here in nature, small town, sunshine, healthy air most of the year, right? So that that's what brought me here. And eventually I had to open this bookstore just because there was no room in our house anymore. There were too many books. Um, that's when Bigfoot started to really take over my life too. Is 2005. Something like Bigfoot, the proposition is that it's a natural animal that has evolved on Earth. So it's a mystery that's a lot more practical, pragmatic, and interesting in that regard. And moving here, you start getting that sort of almost tangible feeling that uh, it's possible that it could live out there. Between all the people who say they saw it and the history of that going back through beyond the European settlers in here, or invaders, if you want to call them that. The native cultures all have this history of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, from all the way from Central California up into Alaska, Canada too. But yeah, so it's a strange coincidence if it's not real, if there's not some basis to it. Why does this recur uh, all through these cultures, many of whom have different languages, different phases of history that brought them here to this continent? And of course, the Europeans too have their various forms. Like you were saying, in Spain there even are a couple, but in Northern Europe there was the Woodwoes or the Green Man, uh, you know, characters, that the stuff that appears on the sculptured forms of the medieval cathedrals. Why is there a hairy wild man there? That's very strange. Uh, but I mean, I'm curious about it, and I'm also very much more skeptical than I used to be, just by observing the Bigfoot research community and how dysfunctional it is, and how even though a lot of them make pretenses towards science, they're not really practicing actual science. It's hard to do science on something that you can't reliably observe. And why, you have to ask, why can't you observe Bigfoot if it's so big and um, noticeable, 10 feet tall or whatever? Why wouldn't you just be able to go out and find one? This is a very big mystery. I don't see how you can explain something with the woo. Um, when we don't have any science to prove those mysteries that they propose, like quantum physics, how that might apply to a creature living out in the wild of the earth is it's very poor solution to the mystery. Like, but this is how people explain things. Well, we can't explain why Bigfoot turns invisible, right? Or why can't we see them or catch them or shoot them? They always just vanish. They, like Matthew Johnson claims, that there's a Bigfoot that came out of nowhere. It was just suddenly there, materialized, and he saw it and felt deathly terror, rushed his family off the mountain, and had post-traumatic stress disorder from it, right? But then what happened is it just vanished again. Well, I mean, if something appears before you and then vanishes again, I think the best thing to do is ask yourself, was that a hallucination? You know, was there something going on in my mind, in my brain? Maybe I have low blood sugar or something. I don't know. But, that is a better explanation than saying it was cloaking, like that this creature can suddenly turn invisible. Uh, so, I mean, I have to think like the things that are proposed by the paranormalists, they are not established by science or evidence. They're established by weird human experiences and people talking about stuff and speculating and taking whatever speculative theoretical science out there and turning it into something like it's a fact. That just because some scientist on a TV show says, well, quantum physics could explain that, and a portal maybe opens up. But I mean, how that is theoretically possible in physics hasn't been established yet, let alone that a Bigfoot creature could walk through one. you know, and if there's Bigfoot creatures walking through portals, why haven't we documented humans being able to do them and find them? Like Matthew Johnson said, he was the first human to come along to discover the portal. I mean, why did humanity have to wait so long for some genius guy to come along and find a portal? And that's why the Janu Bigfoot people didn't come to Earth sooner, because they needed somebody who could hold the portal open and let them all come through in their light form orbs from another solar system far away that was dying. So they had to come here as refugees. What is he, like Leonardo da Vinci? I just I don't see it. I think it's all in his mind. He just made it up. And if I believe something to be real, I have to see a way that it's actually established as real. Just like, well, we can say Newtonian physics is real, and therefore we can send something to Mars, and it actually goes to Mars, lands on Mars, and then we have robotic technologies that allow it to go around on Mars and take pictures of things and sample the soil or whatever. This is the same thing that should happen with Bigfoot. And Bigfoot's not as far away as Mars, it's right here, supposedly. So I would say if it's real, it's got to be a primate, because you just look at the thing. I mean, it has the same foot shape as us. It's more human than ape. I mean, humans are apes too, right? We're all great apes. But the human Homo, they have come along, and they have a bipedal foot structure that's specifically evolved for upright walking. And if Bigfoot is real, that's what it has too. Its feet are not like grasping feet that would hold on a tree like you might find in an orangutan or whatever. If Bigfoot is not an animal, right? If Bigfoot is not a spirit from another dimension, then what we have left is the human psychology. It's what Carl Jung would call an archetype in the human mind or psyche. And on a deep level, we relate to nature through various forms of it, like animals. The native people here in our area have a deep respect for the animals like the salmon, the bear, the eagle, whatever it is. And these all have spirit powers that can relate to us here in our human lives. And these worlds are separate but intermeshed. So if it's not like that, then if it's not like that literally, like quantum physics or whatever, then it's like that in terms of our inner lives, or like, well, spiritual life or whatever you call it. Uh, or the unconscious mind, something that's bubbling around inside of us that causes us to see ourselves in the world of nature. So maybe there are various stimuli like shadows and tree trunks and foliage of the trees and the rocks, and maybe a bear moves through or some other creature, and it starts to conjure up in your mind this image of a Bigfoot, especially as it grows more and more popular in our culture, you know. But I mean, you have to ask yourself, they didn't have In Search of or Ancient Aliens or whatever back in the day. So where did this legend come from? White people probably heard it from natives, some, but I mean, the native cultures are not really prone to talking about such things with outsiders. It's sort of taboo. It's private. Um, it can be bad luck or whatever, or like even a curse against you. But uh, Bigfoot is living in us like that, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Uh, it can be seen when it's not there, or felt when it's not even there. Just like when you're driving at night, you're tired, and out of the corner of your eye, you see something moving. You think, what is it? It looks like a Bigfoot for a second or two. And then you realize, oh, it's just a plant blowing in the breeze. Um, and our minds are capable of generating all kinds of things like that. Uh, I mean, just every night when you're dreaming, you conjure up whole worlds that are very real to you when you're in that. I mean, especially if you learn how to pay attention to it, right? While it's happening. Then if your mind is capable of doing that, then it's capable of seeing things through your eyes too, in the same way. Although, I mean, granted, we're trained not to see that way because it could get us in trouble. We could get hit by a car or something. So Bigfoot could be real. If it's a real animal, then it's plausible that it came across the Bering Strait when there was ice age and the sea level dropped. There was not just like ice, frozen ice. It was land that they could walk across. And so if an animal lived on the coast of Asia there, by Kamchatka or whatever, they could come across. They wouldn't even necessarily notice that they were migrating. They'd just be on some more land. And eventually come here into this, just like the bears and a lot of other animals did. So if that's the case, it would have come down and spread out as it could around the glaciers. And so one of the prime spots for that was along the western coastal areas here, of course. And that was also the last part of the United States land that was settled. So you had a thick population over in the eastern side of the continent. And slowly, Lewis and Clark, and then eventually everybody came out here, the gold rush. And as they came out here, they started encountering intact tribal cultures that still had these legends, and they were on their local historical lands, and they reported these as real animals, in a lot of cases. Um, then that is a creature that's just showing all the traits of a migrating species that came in here and populated just like grizzly bears. So they would have come around the Great Lakes and gone down through the woods, the Catskills and the Appalachia, Alleghenies, that whole area from the Ohio, Pennsylvania, some up even in Maine, all the way through into the south. That whole area there, stretching, inland from the East Coast, is heavily populated with Bigfoot reports. And if you look at the maps, you can see where the sightings are recorded are in these areas where the habitat is the right kind of habitat, like trees, woods, mountains, secluded areas that are away from people, but I mean close enough for people to go out and see them and report that. So I mean, I think it's if the Bigfoot is a real species, to have it living in Ohio is totally plausible, especially now, because the days of people living there out in those lands has diminished. It's become more and more urbanized. There's less farmers, less small towns that are, you know, the center of life. That is all growing back. The deer populations are coming back in huge numbers. The bears, mountain lions, all kinds of animals are habitating those lands that were just all logged off and leveled into farmlands and stuff for decades and decades. And so, I mean, it's possible that there's a re-invasion of Bigfoot going through the whole continent. But I mean, that just begs the question even more. If that's so, why again, even more, don't we have a specimen? You know, there should be. I was puzzled much and deeply disturbed in a lot of ways that we couldn't find the film site in 2003. And if that is something that eluded us, then how can we expect to find Bigfoot if we can't even find Bigfoot's film site? Right? And I met Ian Carton at the Yakima Bigfoot Roundup, where Bob Gimlin was being sort of honored. It was a conference at the ranch. And we got to talking about this problem, and it turned out that he had come up here as well. I'd been going there since 2000 or so, just camping, like curious in the back of my mind where the film site was, but didn't have any good maps or anything. And Ian felt the same way. We got the general directions where we thought it was supposed to be, uh, by like Daniel Perez's Bigfoot at Bluff Creek booklet. I mean, they even had an arrow pointing right at the spot where Rene Hinden supposedly had marked the map for him. But like we had to test all of the hypotheses and all the claims. So we couldn't even necessarily trust Rene Hinden's word on the matter. He could have been pulling a fast one over on Daniel Perez for all we know. Tricking him, because Rene was not known to do that. If he didn't like somebody, he might tell them some information that would lead them astray, just to protect it from them, basically. But, that's when we decided that we were going to kind of make it an official project. This was 2009. And we started going up there and we kind of laid out all the problems. We had, lists of issues. We had maps and charts, and we had gathered all the information we could from online sources, book sources, and, historical sources of people who were there then or lived here or whatever. And we found, there was a really big problem. Like the United States Forest Service didn't even know where the site was. Al Hodgson, who'd been there, who lived over here, he couldn't tell you where it was. And everybody had a different location. So we had to go look at all these different locations to find out if they were really the spot. And we ruled out one after the other until we came back to the location where it had been originally been identified. And we still couldn't find the location because it just didn't look like it at all. It was carved out by a flood in 1964 that washed out all the plants and leveled the sandbars and created some of the sandbars with fine silt sand, like, this is in this jars from the film site. It's practically a dust um, that, the patty creature walked upon. That and some gravel. But it since then has grown back into a dense forest. So to go and try to find the things that you can see in those frames of the film, like the stumps and the trees and the log piles and whatever else is in there, it was hard. We had to pull the vines and the wood debris and branches off of these things until we could find out underneath there was a stump, and in the film there are stumps. So we, identified all those stumps, and then we went and tried to find them on the ground. And sure enough, one after the other, we found them. But, we found these other trees that were off to the side, what seemed to be way off towards the east more than we would have expected. And we went.
It was laurel and
Yeah, well, there was laurel and hardy trees that Bill Munns identified to test us. We had found the big tree, the middle tree, and then the next one over, the ladder tree, called ladder because it has a bunch of branches coming out laterally. It looks like you could climb up. And then in between there was a maple tree that we identified. It's still growing there. The same tree, you could tell by the crook in the trunk. It's got a bend in the trunk, and it's still that way. And the vine maples that were growing there. So you see the red and the yellow colors that are seen in the background of the film. And even like this spiky snag of a dead fir tree that you see in all the film site photos. It's like leaning over sideways and broken off at the top. As a very unique feature. And we found that was sitting right there. It was like a revelation. All of a sudden, place we had stood right in front of before many times. All of a sudden it opened up like rubbing your eyes and taking off all the grime and seeing.
So you guys were
for the
there
first time
before realizing it was the real spot.
Oh yeah, we went through there and just didn't see it. But like one of the things we realized is like you get an illusion of what this film is doing. You see a guy going forward and then just filming something straight ahead basically, and then he kind of turns sideways a little. But what we realized watching some of the animation things that Bill Munns had done, showing the movement of the film subject going this way and the cameraman going this way, each of them is moving relative to each other. And so if you want to reconstruct the film in your mind, you have to do it on a frame by frame basis and consider the distances and angles of view that are happening in that film. And so when Patterson was running up along the creek and crossed the creek, and you see that jangling, bumping camera, you first get a glimpse of the creature who's over here more on the side. And this was where that crook in the creek was and still is. And they first saw the creature right there, supposedly, sitting, standing, or squatting by the creek side. And then it walks up the bank and onto the flat part of the sandbar. But Patterson, is supposedly getting his camera out, gets it rolling, and starts moving forward. When he first starts it rolling, you get a few decent frames. That's where you can see the creature from behind. And you see its foot come up, and you can see the sole of its foot with the toes and everything. I mean, especially if you can find a decent copy of the film, which we couldn't find back then, because it's copyrighted, and people who had decent copies weren't feeling comfortable with sharing it publicly. But eventually it got better and better copies out there. So we were able to see more and more and more. And getting certain books that helped us with decent images, it helped. But that camera view is basically facing westward. When he's running north, but he's starting to angle over here to get the creature to the northwest. And then the creature's moving this way. Patterson goes through the creek, stumbles around, And when he gets his camera back up, it's facing almost directly north. And then the creature walks past the camera, looks back, swings its arms, and then it goes past some trees and debris. And so at that point, he's already turned his camera slightly eastward when he realizes that the view is obstructed by those trees. So then he has to go back like this, and then he moves forward, and then forward again, and then again. So, I mean, he's doing this whole shifting thing. You can see him, if you watch the ground in the film rather than in the subject over here, you see that he's moving forward in a significant distance over that log, moving forward again, and then looking almost eastward towards the end of the film. And so that's why, we were always looking over here more, too much over here, because we thought that's north, like basically. But the camera position moving like that made it such that you had to look over this way on the side. And that's when it suddenly dawned on us what we were looking at. But we had to sort of, in our minds, we had to remove all of the new growth. We couldn't just remove the forest debris. We had to remove all the trees that had grown there since 1967. So what we did to do that was we surveyed the whole site, right? And we put down on our survey grid, doing 10 by 10 square areas. Anything within that square would be drawn on our map. And so we eliminated all the new stuff, and all that we drew there was old debris, like, old growth stumps and log piles that had still not rotten away. And of course, then the trees, the old trees that were older than 67, we drew those in too. So in our diagram, we could then suddenly see the film site as it was, and Robert, Leiterman, who drew the map, started identifying one by one by one with all these artifacts that are here currently that were seen in the old film site photos before it all grew back over. And so we got Jamie, a scientific student at Humboldt State, to do some trigonometry, and he figured out mathematically that it was beyond a doubt, 99.7% certainty that we had the exact same spot. But even then, there were still people who didn't believe us. Even now to this day, there's still some goofballs out there who try to contest it. But I mean, we documented everything. So if you want to contest it, let's see your evidence. Let's see your documentation. Let's see you analyze all the other options.
Well, even that the place has changed a lot. When Rowdy showed me yesterday the different spots, that tree, that stump over there, I mean, it's pretty obvious that's
Yeah, but what you saw there is as a result of
yeah,
many years since 2009 when we first walked in there. It was a thicket, you could not see through it. You couldn't even see the stumps, and the trees back there were hidden behind big piles of branches and debris and junk. And you try to go through that and it'd scratch you all up. But I mean, we went up there so many times that just walking around through it, eventually we kind of crunched it all down. And then we started thinking, why don't we just remove all this dead stuff and see what we can see? And since then, we've been doing that, not cutting any trees down or anything, but just trying to kind of maintain what Rowdy calls like the view shed, to be able to stand there where Patterson was and hopefully see what is back there, just a few hundred feet. It's not that far. We should be able to recreate the film, right? But there's still too many trees there to really do that. But at least we have the measurements. We have exact measurements and stuff, so we can do things like determine how tall that creature was and so forth.
It was 6 feet something.
Yeah,
right?
well, some people claim it's over 7 feet tall, but there's various methods, like you saw on that TV show Expedition Bigfoot, perhaps they did a LiDAR scan of the film site. Rowdy took them there, showed it to him, and the LiDAR analysis of those major stumps and trees, triangulated with a point right in front of the camera position that Rowdy and Robert have identified. It's a piece of that wood debris pile that sticks up, and it's very unique. So you can use that as a concrete point. And like, so they did an analysis like that. It's photogrammetry. It's telling you that the creature is 6'2", or maybe 6'3", or maybe just 6 feet, right? And if you measure the foot that I said, you could see in the early part of the film, we know that that foot is about 14 inches. It's leaving 14.5-inch tracks. So with a little splay in the ground, it's probably only 14 inches. But you can line those up with the body of that creature, and there's only so many that fit in there. They're not 2 feet long. They're like, just over a foot long. So the creature, as it's slumping forward like this, is actually under 6 feet. So if you stood that creature up straight, in erect posture, it might be 6'1", 6'2". But Bigfoot could be 6 foot tall, and it wouldn't affect whether it's real or not. The thing is, like, the Bigfoot believers are always trying to make Bigfoot seem out of proportion with ordinary things, so it can't be explained as a man in a suit. But it could be a man in a suit. It's exactly the size of Bobo, from Finding Bigfoot. I mean, it's that's what it looks like. I've seen Bobo walking on that path right there on the film site, and he looks exactly like the Bigfoot in the film. Put a fur on him, and he would be a Bigfoot. It wouldn't be 7 or 8 feet tall. It's just absurd. That good enough?